So it's banter time.
We're the duo today.
Russ and I are going to try to do a good job here without our conscience sitting next to us. So
yes, the rudder of this rudderless ship.
She truly is the steering wheel that keeps us on track and helps us to do the right thing. And again, our prayers are with her and Phyllis and Betsy and Bonnie and Brian as they work through the issues to pay homage to Glenn. So keep them in your prayers, we ask. Couple of announcements. Obviously, we're coming up on Holy Week with Palm Sunday this Sunday. If you have grandchildren or kids or whatever, we'd love for you to have them with us to process with palms this Sunday. That would be awesome to have. So that's worship at 9:30. And then we begin Holy Week with worship service on Wednesday night with soup and sandwich at 6. And we were treated last night to hot dogs and soup with Kay and Gary and Kate Stollemeyer. So thank you very much for that.
It was super good too.
Yeah, I'd been craving a hot dog for a while, so.
I eat them all the time. Supposedly it takes a week off your life, so I knocked a couple of years off at least.
And then we'll have Maundy, Thursday service at 7 p.m. as well, and Good Friday at 7 too. And then Easter Sunday we will have breakfast at 8.
Yep.
So actually, I forgot Saturday. Saturday's the Easter egg hunt at 3 o'clock.
Oh yeah, don't forget that. So Sunday there'll be a sign-up sheet on the table under the clock. If you hadn't called in to the office and said how many and that you were interested, you can fill that out on Sunday. Just put your name and how many. That way we can be better, have a better idea of how much food to make, so we don't end up with too much or too little.
Correct. So, yeah. So Easter Sunday, that's at 8 o'clock before worship at 9:30, and then we'll have worship here in the church, and then at 2 o'clock we'll have worship at Autumn Lake as well. So if you'd like to join us there, that would be tremendous.
So next week, if you want some church, you got it.
You got church. It's
covered.
like my brother busts my chops all the time. He's like, yeah, you're coming up on the Super Bowl of Christian holidays.
Oh, well, you made the playoffs, right?
Yes, we've made the playoffs. I think we're a contender in the Final Four. Or what is it? What's is the two just the championship?
It's just the championship. Yeah, they don't have a cute name for that one.
Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four, and then
just you two.
We're champions.
Oh.
Do you have any other announcements?
I probably do. There's a lot going on.
There is a lot going on.
When's the next blood draw? Isn't that coming up?
May 13th is the next blood drive. One other thing also to be in the know about, the first Sunday in June, Thrivent Financial will be here to provide us with a seminar on estate planning. So that'll be at 1:30 that Sunday afternoon.
Okay.
And they'll answer whatever questions we have about it. And they've been here before, so.
So if all those millions are burning a hole in your pocket, they're going to hook you up.
They will. But I think other than that, that's what, we have a pretty busy week coming up.
There's probably a million other things. Check your bulletin, check the website.
Yep.
Wednesday Weekly, all the places.
Yep. So what are we talking about this week, Russ?
Oh, it looks like homelessness.
We have the social message on homelessness, which, I think we've said it a lot, and it's really, it's a document that advocates for accompaniment and how it is that we can be beside folks who may need some assistance, and it may be just on a temporary basis. It may just be something like a friend of mine, his house burned down and they're temporarily out of house, and how do you make that work, as opposed to what you mentioned as chronic homelessness, where people have decided that that's where they want to live.
Or not decided, and that's their only option.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So, and I think in the first paragraph, it kind of surprised me a little bit about how they said that women and children are really the crux of homelessness, and I just never.
Well, this was in 1990.
True.
So this is an old statement. Looking at this, I pulled up some of the stats and stuff, and there's still a good chunk of it, but there's a lot of veterans in there now, and and looking at stats from back then and now, we're moving in the right direction on a lot of it. It seems like, even though there's different parts of the country, maybe it doesn't look that way.
And I think especially for our veteran population, the recent conflicts in Iraq, Afghanistan, et cetera, have really taken a toll on that population, and it really comes down for especially for them. How do we provide for their mental health, and how do we make that work? And that's a part of, I think, the reckoning that they have is how are they trying to figure that out themselves.
Well, it's a really weird thing because some of the areas in some of the different cities and things, COVID actually helped the homeless population because there was more funding out there for things, and they wanted to know where everybody was. Mm-hmm. So some of the places, they found areas for the homeless population to go, and other areas, it was kind of, Wild West.
Well, I do recall that, saying that there was a lot of outreach that occurred because of COVID to try to meet the needs of that population. And it's too bad that it had to come to that for people to take notice.
All right. Well, in every dark day, there's a little sunlight.
There is a little sun. Not today, though.
Yeah, not today. Now it's just rain. And one of the things I was thinking about, because they talk about it can be anybody. There's no specific. It's only these people. Where some of the cities, I did a kind of deep dive on where they've sort of cleaned up their homeless issue. Mm-hmm. And Bakersville, California in 2021 was, as far as chronic homeless, was basically at 0.
And that's amazing.
Right, and it's almost 400,000 people in that city.
And why is it that if there's a model that it doesn't get embraced and
Well, I did, essentially what they did was they go out and they find all the homeless people and they write their name down. They have a name. They're not just, we have, 100 homeless. We have John and Mary and, whoever. And then they find out what's the deal with them. Why are you here? Is it because you want to be? Is it because you just need a job? You just need a house? What's the situation? And then once a week, they have a group that meets and they take 15 names and they figure out what to do with them, and then they act.
And hasn't that been exactly what we've talked about, though? Providing people with identity. When you come beside them and someone as Russ, as opposed to that guy that lives under the bridge.
Right.
How much more is that? Is that meaningful to somebody?
Right, and it's just like everything else. I mean, even if you get into politics, if you think about the left or the right, you're not thinking about a person, you're thinking about a thing, an entity. Mm-hmm. And you can do anything to an entity. You can treat it any way you want because it doesn't really mean. But if you're talking about, Phil's this side, then it's a person. And Absolutely. They have feelings and everything else. And it's the same with a situation like this. But that's their chronic homeless is basically 0. And in the article I read, now they're working on the veterans. So this is a continuous thing because it doesn't go away. they'll get some more, and then they'll work on that and try to work it back down to 0 again.
Right. And I thought in this there was a definition. It says being homeless is being without shelter, resources, without support, without recognition, without the power of influence. And I think that goes back to where in the Bakersville model, there is that potential for influence because people are actually quantified as someone.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I did look up sort of the stats for the state and for Frederick. And as of 2020, the state of Maryland had 6,360 chronic homeless. And, or no, they weren't chronic. That was just homeless. Because the way they do it is, and there's really not a great way to do it, but the way they do it is they pick a day. On this day, there were this many people in shelters and this, and then they count chronic homeless
Right.
outside of that.
Right.
And then that's the number. But I think it's 10 out of 100,000, I think is the, 10 people out of every 100,000 is what the percentage
The
is.
average.
Yeah, something like that. But, then when you look at California I think was 150,000 or 160,000.
Well, but also I think, you look at the different climate too.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. So that's the reason, part of that. And then, you don't know how they're treating them, how we're treating them. But for the most part, the best one out of all of them as far as percentage was Mississippi.
As opposed to Utah, like you mentioned.
Yeah, and they had come up. But most states were, I think they were down to like 6 per 100,000. And most of them were, the worst was I think 14 or 15. And then most of them were around 8 to 10.
So what was Mississippi then?
They were 6. I don't remember what it was, 1,000 something or whatever.
Okay.
But sometimes you don't know. Is that because they don't count them?
Well,
Is that because
they don't know.
Or they don't know, or are they doing a good job? It's hard to say.
Well, as I mentioned to you, when I worked in D.C., there were different places that you might not know that people are living there, but they are, different enclaves within, like the parks, the bigger, wooded areas and whatnot. And you might not know that there's someone living in there, and you might not count that because you just don't know.
According to Frederick stats, we have 286 chronic homeless in Frederick.
And is that just Frederick City?
That's just Frederick City.
Yeah.
I don't think that was the county. I think that was Frederick City. But the things I remember, because over by Costco, there's a couple places over by the median, and there's some places where there was like Tent City in there for a while.
Yeah.
And then they moved them out and cut it all down flat, so there's no sort of hiding place. Well, where did they all go to?
Well, the Super 8 and the Econo Lodge are the low-income housing stuff over there. So that's where a lot of those folks are, migrating from to be there on the median and stuff. But I don't know, because there's, and whether that's a statewide program or it's the county, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I looked in to see, one thing about Frederick County, we have pretty good programs for stuff. And they have PATH is the national one, and then SOAR is another one that they do, and a lot of it's mental health and things like that. But I think a lot of those, they have to apply themselves. You
Right, you have to go to the intake yourself, yeah.
Right, but I think they said they had 29 scattered site housing in the city limits. So,
Well, yeah, I know they have nighttime shelters and stuff like that, cold weather shelters. It's, but when it's not cold weather and it's not like it is today, where are those folks?
Right, and the thing is, it doesn't seem like that. 286 people doesn't seem like that many.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't, but think about it. Really, if you put 286 people in this church, we're packed to the rafters.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I saw, because Utah did a program where they housed people first. They're like, oh, you don't have a place to live? Boom. And then they evaluate them afterwards. And I think that was saving the city or the state. I think if they were putting them in a shelter, it was costing them $20,000 a person for a year.
Right.
And I think it was like a little over half that, something like that, if they did the housing first, if you can find the housing.
Susan is saying the current term is precariously housed, which includes those in tent situations, sleeping outside, whatever. And I
Okay.
could see that. I mean, that makes sense. I know when I was, working on my internship in Westminster, Pastor Kevin was trying to initiate one of those tiny house communities, where you could provide, a small place for someone to stay. The biggest problem for that, though, was the infrastructure, like sewer,
Right.
electric, water, and then on the flip side of that was people not really loving their neighbor because they didn't want that type of situation in their neighborhood. So, I mean, at some point, if we want to solve this problem, then we have to figure it out, and we have to, come together as humanity to embrace someone who may just need a lift up. And once I talk often about this show, This Is Us, that I watch on NBC, and the one uncle was basically homeless. He was living in a trailer, but basically homeless, and he was a Vietnam veteran, and et cetera. And then the family found him and then embraced him and then kind of helped him get into some different programs to help him be a person himself again, right? To get the mental health stuff, to get the financial aid stuff, and now as the story progresses, he's become more of a force within the family, and I think that's important, especially if folks have drifted away from their family. I know in Washington it's a big melting pot of people from all over the country, and I've located people there that have been missing for however long, and yes, they're missing, but they're adults, so they're able to do what they want to do. But it would be nice to be able to figure out how to help them work that family dynamic to come back together, so that they don't have to live in the freezing rain or the snow or whatever, that they do have worth and they are valued as a person.
Yeah, and I know, looking at sort of culturally, there's different countries around the world where they don't really have much of a problem with this because the family is essentially required to take care of their own.
Correct.
So, if you have a person with problems, it's your
Really,
job to take care of it. And I don't know that we embrace that as much here.
Well, I agree, and I think it's the same thing with family members. There are cultures where if an elder family member is no longer able to take care of themselves, or their spouse has died, or whatever the circumstance, there are cultures where the family
Puts them on the ice floe and
yeah, puts them on the funeral pyre, sets them out. No, but the family takes them in and provides that support. That's the family dynamic, and we don't necessarily typically do that in American culture.
well, we're based a lot culturally on individuals
Yeah,
forging your own way, doing all that, and it's weakness to ask for help, and I think we're going a little bit away from that. I think there's a happy medium in there.
yeah.
It's great to be self-sufficient and everything, but you should never be afraid to ask for help.
Right, and that goes for anything. I mean, that goes for whether you're in whatever precarious situation you are. If you are in need, it shouldn't be hard for you to, and it shouldn't be a stigma either to ask for that help. It should be something that is embraced by everyone.
All right. Well, and going back to, if these people who are homeless don't have a name or an identity and they're just the homeless, it's hard to sort of help them in that way.
So how do you fix that?
Well, you go out and talk to them.
That's
you ask
right.
them questions. You find out, hey, what do you need? And you may find some that they're like, I'm good. This is what I want to do. And I don't know what you do with that. But the people who don't want to live like that and want to get out of that cycle, find out what their need and
be able to provide service for that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it boils down to accompaniment. How do you? And that was one of the things that I did as a patrolman and whatever. I talked to people. I was that knucklehead that just and I had one lady say, I come down here from New York and I meet the one sarcastic cop that's just like my husband. But you have to do that. You have to, especially in that profession, you got to get to know people and figure out how I can direct this person or how I can help them find their own direction. And it's challenging, for some that, like you said, don't want it.
Yeah.
There was a woman, who from the time that I got on the job, like back in, I want to say she was there in Lafayette Park living for like 20 or 30 years, just living in the park. And, there were other people there that were the same, and we got to know them. We knew their first names. We knew, their family stories and whatnot, and that's where they chose to be because that's what they wanted to do. And I don't think we have the right to infringe on that. If that's your choice, that's what you want to do, and you're self-sustaining and you're able to take care of yourself and be protected and then okay. But
Right, as long as it doesn't get into a public health issue.
Right, absolutely.
Or anything like that, because I think it's Finland? Finland basically has no homelessness, and part of it is they have facilities that are open to the public, showers, bathrooms, stuff like that. I think that was the deal with them. And same in Hawaii. Like Hawaii apparently is the best place to be homeless because they have public showers and bathrooms and things that you don't have to pay for.
right.
And so
And I
it's
know
nice. And
there are various churches, around the area that do have those too. They have, a day where you can come in, you can wash clothes, or you can come in and get a shower and get a ticket to get a meal or whatever. And that's something that different congregations and different communities just need to figure out for themselves. How are we going to do it? And is it, and I don't know for sure because I don't see it here in Walkersville, but I know there's kids that may not have homes or whatever, but I don't see it. So,
Right.
How do we reach out to those who we're not seeing, and how do we find a way to put them with a right program to help them to be able to move forward when you're not seeing it?
Right, and it's really up to people to, hey, I know about this person, and
Right.
they may need a hand.
Yep. I think when you go to page 2, we look at the historical place in our church where technically Jesus and Mary and Joseph were homeless when Jesus was born, and they had to make room for where they were going to go, and then the story when Jesus says that I was a stranger and you welcomed me, as opposed to you didn't.
Right.
Why am I in your grace? Well, because you didn't know who I was and you took care of me. And I think that's important.
Right, absolutely. And, I think most of us have probably been down to DC before or Baltimore or whatever, and you're walking down the street and there's somebody living on the street and they look sketchy and so there's a safety issue there sometimes, but you know.
And I will go to the flip side of that in my career where I knew there were people that acted homeless, but they lived in a multi-million-dollar home. And that's part of my cynicism, part of my skepticism that is like, you know, all I need is a job. Okay, well, there's a ton of places around here that have signs out, well, I don't want to do that. And that's a different balance, you know. I remember when I started out working, and granted, I was a kid, I was a busboy. Did I want to be a busboy? No, but I did it.
Right. But that's one of the things where it makes it hard sometimes, and where a lot of these people who've been successful, they have groups who know sort of the lay of the land, and they go out and figure out who's who and this and that.
And I think that's where, you know, especially our partnership with Glade Valley here does really, really well, because we have a lot of people that, you know, we're on the circuit of people coming in and just trying to, you know, take advantage. And with our support of Glade Valley, we're able to kind of use them as a clearinghouse, and they know the people, so they're able to service them better than we are, albeit from, you know, folks that may be in our congregation that need help that we would know better, you know, as opposed to, you know, transients or whoever that are in.
Right, we're not turning them away, but
we're providing them with a service.
where
We're
they
giving
need to
them,
go. Yeah.
here's a place where you can get food, here's a place where they'll give you a night's stay in a hotel, different things, which I think for us as St. Paul's is a really great partnership, you know, for us. If you need clothes, we're able to get you downstairs to the thrift shop and whatnot. We're able to be that piece in the community that helps, that kind of, you know, forms those partnerships to be able to make things happen for different people. And I think that's super important.
All right. And I think we've covered most of this other stuff already.
Yeah. I think one of the things that says towards the end is, yeah, adequate housing is needed for humane living, and that's true. I mean, we really need to find a way. We can't just, and trust me, I've been in the position where, okay, we need to clean out this homeless camp, we need to do whatever. And part of that was, yes, it wasn't lawful for them to do that there, but sanitary, you know, conditions, health conditions, all sorts of different things, you know, taking place that weren't conducive to that being a true community. But then how do we come aside to help them find a place to be able to make that viable?
Yeah, because I think, if I remember right, it may or may not be right, I thought Times Square in New York, basically what they did was they just shipped them all out and dumped them, you know, rounded everybody up and to clean up Times Square and just dumped them somewhere.
Well, that's right,
You know.
before, I think it was back in the late 80s when I first came on the job, you know, it was the same thing that a police department did with the ladies of the evening. It was like, okay, you know, we're loading them up and we're going to just drive them across the bridge, and now it's your
Problem solved.
Yeah. Right?
Right, and that's the one thing you don't want to do.
Right, it doesn't solve the problem.
And I did pull like national stats, and in 2007 the count was 647,000, and in 2020 it was 580,000. So I mean that's $60,000
going down.
for $60,000 person.
People that have now been helped.
Yeah. Right. In 2021, the statistics weren't that great because it says 326, but they didn't count what they consider chronic homeless because of COVID.
Okay.
You know, so they only counted the people who had been in a shelter for at least a night. So that number's kind of
skewed.
looks really good,
Yeah.
except for when you realize a whole bunch of people weren't counted in it.
Right.
But yeah, so going in the right direction, but there's lots more work to do.
And I think, you know, for us here at St. Paul's, that kind of ties in with what we're trying to do with the refugee project. You know, the folks technically that have come from Afghanistan, that eventually are going to come from the Ukraine, et cetera, are folks that, don't have a home. They're living in a hotel, or they're living wherever it is that the government is providing resources. But, by us being able to sponsor a family for a year at least is going to give them their identity, give them a way to kind of establish roots in our community, and hopefully it's something that will benefit them, obviously.
Right.
But it also, I think, it can benefit us, because then we come beside people that we don't know. We may not understand their culture, and it's a perfect opportunity for us to learn.
Right, and that's what a lot of the issues are in the world, is not understanding where other people are coming from, because either you don't want to know or you don't take the time to.
Right. And I think we've done pretty good so far with our campaign. The last I checked, we had a little over $1,100. The generosity team had set a goal of $4,000, so we could still make that. But I think every little bit is going to help.
Absolutely.
So, well, we hope that you have suffered through Russ and I today.
This was 10 times better than the first time we had to duo it, for sure.
without our good conscience beside us. But we are going to take the next 2 weeks off for Holy Week and for some other things that I have to do. And then we will be back on the 28th.
Yep, it'll be 3 of us minus you.
Well,
Or is that maybe?
It's probably going to be 2 if I don't find another person to sit in.
Okay.
So
that's fine
Deb
too.
Horton is going to join us. Thank you, Deb. We're going to talk about end of life social message. So that will kind of help us tie into what we're going to do with Thrivent Financial a month from then. So
All right.
I think it'll be worthwhile. So
Absolutely.
at least Russ and Deb will be here. I'm not sure that Belinda will, but if she is, great. If not, we'll figure
The
it out.
seat's always waiting. So
It is.
whenever she's ready.
It is. We'll see you Sunday at church, or Saturday at the Easter egg roll.